AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is a creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Tamara Andreas, is with us today to talk about accessing your core being to heal childhood trauma. Tamara is an author and international trainer. She has helped thousands of seminar participants in more than 12 countries benefit from life-changing methods, including the wholeness work and core transformation. She has developed advanced core transformation formats to meet the needs of a wider range of clients. And her own client work includes deep levels of transformation, making change easier and more complete. Welcome to AVAIYA.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be spending time with you and with all of your listeners and learners.
Yeah, right back at you. So excited to have you here. And I'm curious, let's get started with what is core transformation?
Okay, so core transformation is a very gentle step-by-step process developed by Tamara Andreas, and it transforms feelings and behaviors and patterns of thinking that we don't like, including issues that result from traumatic past experiences. And it generates a profound sense of well-being, inner peace, wholeness.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Good. Thank you for the brief overview of that. And I'm curious. So since we're talking about childhood trauma today, can you give some examples of perhaps results that you've seen people get by doing core transformation, having had trauma in their life?
For sure. So there was a woman, for example, who had very serious child abuse. In fact, her parents actually used to, maybe it was step parents, I don't remember for sure, used to break her fingers as punishment. It was just really awful. I mean, I think on more than one occasion even. And so, of course, as an adult, she was affected by all of that. And she actually took our 3-day seminar, and she told me later that at the beginning, she felt this just a sense of emptiness all the time. She just felt completely empty inside. And at the end of those 3 days, she said she was beginning to be filled up. And something like that usually doesn't, turn around just like that, right? It takes a little longer. So after those 3 days, she continued working first with somebody else guiding her, and then later she was guiding herself through the process. And after about 3 months then of this, she said she just felt like a completely different person. She felt filled up inside, and everything about her life was changing. She was eating healthier foods. She was in a healthier relationship, and she was just a basically happy person. So there's one example, and there are just so many others because core transformation can work with virtually every emotional response that people can have to childhood abuse.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. And I'm curious, just take a step back. How did you get into this work? What got you into this field?
Yeah, thanks. So, first I got into the field of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And now I'm saying that what we're doing is different in some ways from what people usually have experienced when they've done NLP before. But that was the first step. When I was in high school, my older sister, Tamara Andreas, and her boyfriend at that time, who they later got married, Steve Andreas, they changed to the name Andreas when they got married. But anyway, so they got interested in NLP, and so then I did too. I was really fascinated by the whole idea that you could actually change how you were thinking. And so then later, like about about 10 years later, Connie Ray developed core transformation. At that time, I was a sponsor of trainings in Ohio, and she came in to teach part of our master practitioner training. And it actually took me about those 3 days to decide that this is what I wanted to focus on, this method and other kinds of supporting methods, because of the depth of transformation. So, I was used to seeing people change thinking, change their feelings, change behaviors. I was used to seeing that already with other kinds of NLP techniques. But with core transformation, I was also seeing people accessing these deep states of well-being, a sense of profound oneness, or a sense of love that's not just loving and being loved by somebody else, but just a state of love that just is, and this kind of a thing. And so that's what attracted me to core transformation.
I love it. A family affair. Great. And for people who don't know what NLP is, can you give us a little brief overview of that before we move on to talking more about core transformation?
Sure. So NLP is, well, at the core of it, it's a way to study how we, each of us, create our own subjective experience, or we could say we could create our own personal world that we live in, right? Because you and I could be in the exact same situation, and yet we each have our own experience of it that might be totally different. And so we each create our subjective model of reality. And so in the course of that, what's come from that are a couple of things. One is ways to change our own subjective model of reality to make it more the way we want it to be. And then also ways to model people who are really skilled at things, like Milton Erickson, Virginia Satir were modeled by the early developers of NLP. And so that's basically what NLP is. And you can do so much with NLP that I couldn't even list all of them if we took the whole half hour just for that, but the core transformation is really it came out of the NLP models. However, it really has become its own model because it works at a deeper level. It has its own presuppositions, its own assumptions that are different from other kinds of NLP work.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little deeper about core transformation then. So what are some of the key concepts our viewers would need to understand in order to utilize this in their life?
Okay. And some of these concepts are, I'm sure, already familiar to many of your viewers, and others are, maybe going to another level of things. So first is unconscious mind. So most people probably already know that, we do things consciously with our conscious intention. And then there are also things that just happen automatically that we don't even want necessarily. And so, for example, if consciously I want to feel calm in a situation, and yet instead I'm feeling nervous and jittery, that lets us know that it's our unconscious that's creating that experience. And so in order to change it, we need to access the unconscious. And that's one concept. Also, we work with the concept of parts. And so we often say, just in our ordinary speaking, that, there's a part of me that really wants to change careers or change my relationship. And then there's also a part of me that wants to stay with what I've got, that if it's a career, like it pays the bills or whatever. Or with our feelings, I might say, I'm really with my ex for leaving me. And at the same time, there's a part of me that kind of feels relieved, that sort of thing. So we use the parts language when we're talking about our experience. So with core transformation, we work through this parts model, we could say, this metaphor of parts, so that we're working with the, at the right address on the inside, we could say. We're working with the unconscious part that is necessary to work with in order to make the change. Mm-hmm. And so then also another concept we have is every behavior, thought, or feeling has a positive intended purpose. So this unconscious part of me, maybe it's creating a sense of shame. Well, I don't like feeling shame and it's not helping me, but this unconscious part of me is not a bad part. It's not trying to cause a problem. It's actually trying to cause something positive for me. Maybe it's trying to help me be a good person, or maybe it's trying to help me please other people so that I can survive. These parts were formed when we were very young, oftentimes in very difficult kinds of circumstances. And so, it's not always very logical, but it's trying to create something positive for me. And then, so all of this, some of your listeners are probably familiar with, or some of them at least. Then through this, though, we can also get to deeper unconscious purposes that take us all the way to a core state. That's what I was talking about earlier, the state that's at a beingness level. Yeah. So that's just a really brief, I know we don't have a lot of time, so that's just a very brief explanation of some of our key concepts.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for going through those. And I'm curious too, you kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but based on these key concepts, what's unique about core transformation as a healing modality? What sets it apart in your experience?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the first thing is that the process itself feels deeply compassionate and kind to do. And I think this is especially important for people who have gone through trauma. They've already been through so much, we don't want to do anything harsh with them. And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that with any kind of work that we do, we're likely to encounter some kind of resistance to the work. And with core transformation, we have a unique way of working with this, where we don't need to use inner struggle or willpower or just kind of bulldoze through it. Instead, we actually honor that other part of us, the part that is resisting, and include that the part that's resisting actually has a gift for us. And with core transformation, we can include that gift, and so that it makes the work more effective, more inclusive, and better in the long run. Mm-hmm. And then another way that it's unique, again, is it works at that beingness level, which is so important for people dealing with trauma. It's not just rehashing through emotions. It's going to a deeper level that then allows those emotions to be healed rather than just relived over and over again. Mm-hmm. So, and even for the part of us that was so traumatized to become our teacher. So that's something unique about it. And then the resource for change with core transformation comes through the very part of us that was traumatized, or, if we're working with something else, the very part of us that's creating the response we want to change. And so we're not like imposing something from the outside. We're not consciously thinking, oh, I want to have more inner peace on my life, so I'm going to just, do that. We're working through that inner part that was so hurt somehow, and getting that part's unique resource that's still there, that's available through the part. It's just, the part didn't know how to have access to it, but it's still there, available through that very part of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love, one thing that keeps coming to my mind as you describe this is just how compassionate it sounds to just have that self-compassion, especially when you talked about our propensity to perhaps have resistance to whatever we're trying to heal. Right. And then, but not, being mean to that part of ourselves who's resisting. Right. It obviously, once again, had that purpose and served probably a pretty amazing survival purpose for us at one point. Right. So I think that, I love that. I love that it's very compassionate and loving. So thank you for that. So what about research? I know that there's been some research on core transformation. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet. Yeah. So there have been several studies actually, and one in particular was a randomized controlled trial that was published in a peer-reviewed journal, the Journal of Counseling and Development in 2019, authored by Dinesh Braganza and his team. And so, according to their research, the study shows that core transformation it brings us significant change, both in terms of symptom reduction. In other words, whatever the problem was gets better, and also in increased well-being, even from a single session with a skilled guide. Now, that's not for everybody, but in general, we can say that that was the case from the results of this study. And then one thing also that stands out to me from the study is, so they used a research instrument called, a questionnaire, the GHQ questionnaire. And according to this questionnaire, of all the participants, a portion of them could have qualified for a clinical diagnosis before the session. Now, of that group, 61% of them, so a majority of them, were no longer in that category. And 4 weeks, measured 4 weeks after the single session.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so that's pretty significant. And it shows that it's not a magic wand to cure all, that for everybody, just like that's going to make everything better. However, it definitely can create significant change for people in a relatively short time.
And I'm curious, the clinical diagnosis you mentioned that all those people would have had. Is that a clinical diagnosis of what, PTSD or anxiety, depression, or is it just general? They didn't say necessarily.
Yeah, so this questionnaire deals with a range of possible kinds of issues. It's not specifically focused on just one thing. So yeah, so they may have, we don't know, basically. It's the short answer to the question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. That's very interesting to see those results for people. And I love that, obviously, right, there doesn't seem to be any quick fixes in the world of healing trauma, but things can be faster than other things. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm curious, so if someone watching right now obviously is coming because they've had trauma in their past, specifically childhood, and they wanted to get started doing this, is this something they only do with someone who's like a skilled practitioner? Is this something they can do partially on their own, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's an important question. And that really can be quite individual. Most people who are dealing with something significant like healing childhood trauma are much better off being guided by somebody else. One-on-one. And so for some people, it will make the most sense to work with somebody who already has skills and can guide them. For some people, though, it's appropriate to come to a public seminar where people come. Not everybody's coming because they want to heal childhood trauma, for sure. Some are coming because they want weight loss, and some are coming because they want to, change a fear of public speaking, or people have all different reasons for coming. And so for some people, that they sense that they might be relatively easy, and have a relatively smooth experience, they can come to a public seminar. And then for some people, some people have worked with serious kinds of issues by themselves, even just from the book. So there's quite a range. I would say for most people, it's much easier to go through the process being guided by somebody else at first.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yes, I understand. Okay. So where do you think your method, right, core transformation, fits into someone's whole journey of recovering from trauma?
Well, that's a good question too. So, everybody has their model for the process of healing from trauma, and we have ours. And so the 3 stages of trauma, the way that we look at it, is geared towards inner structures and how these inner structures need to be transformed and healed. So the first stage for dealing with childhood trauma often is reaching a position of safety with respect to a traumatic event or events. And so during this stage one, oftentimes a person who has gone through some kind of trauma finds themselves, the typical response then is to try to completely obliterate that experience, to just not think about it, but to pretend like it didn't happen, even sometimes to forget about it consciously. And so the problem with that is that it usually doesn't totally work. And so they might be separated from it most of the time, but then something happens that triggers them, and then they relive it as though it's happening. And so they haven't actually achieved safety with respect to the past traumatic event, just doing it that way. And the other problem with that way of doing it is that people then typically lose touch with themselves. So they have also less access to their own joy, their own inner wisdom, etc. So there's another process that we would often do in stage one called the NLP phobia trauma method that can help somebody achieve a true position of safety with respect to the past traumatic event so that they can think about it without reliving it and learn from it and not have a fear anymore of being triggered back into it. Now, with core transformation, it's often not necessary to do a separate process for stage one. So core transformation isn't specifically a stage one method, but we often don't need to deal with stage one with core transformation. Stage two is healing all the various responses that often come from a past trauma. So for example, shame and worthlessness, sadness, grief, emptiness, abandonment, anger, rage, resentment, hurt, betrayal, fear, anxiety, hopelessness, despair, judgment of ourselves, of others, going mental and retreating from the body and becoming over analytical about things, inauthenticity, people pleasing, habits, addictive behavior. So there's a long list, and of course there's more even than this. And core transformation, one reason it's so helpful to learn for somebody dealing with trauma is that it can work with all of these. It has such a wide range of things that it works with. So core transformation can really do the heavy lifting of healing from trauma. And then after doing a lot of core transformation, there's a third stage that we recognize of even deeper wholeness work. And so there's another process that we teach called the wholeness work that it's really difficult to explain in words how it's different, but it can take us to an even deeper level of healing after a person's done a bunch of core transformation work. And really the only way to understand the difference is probably to experience it. One of my clients said, it's like wholeness work transforms something I can't even quite put my finger on, and core transformation transforms what I can put my finger on, something like that. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, good explanation. Is it like, is this stage three more of like what one might call a spiritual experience, or is this do you not talk spirituality in what you do?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So with core transformation, most people already would say that they're accessing spiritual states. However, there's no need for anyone to have a spiritual belief system or anything like that, because the experience is what it is. And it doesn't really change based on what we call it or what we believe about it. It just is. So it already helps us access that, what we could call a spiritual dimension. The wholeness work just goes a little farther. It's a little more complete in terms of helping us experience a sense of spiritual wholeness. It includes more directly inner structures that core transformation already begins to address, begins to include, but the wholeness work then includes those even a little bit more directly. That said, it works on a more subtle level than in general, especially when people are first learning it. And that's why we want people to start with the core transformation process if they're recovering from trauma. Because core transformation, that can handle like the intense negative emotions, and go with those and take them to a positive place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I so appreciate that you stress the safety, reaching safety in that stage one, because that is so, so important for people who have, struggled with childhood trauma, especially. So awesome. Well, thank you for going through those stages. It sounds like a beautiful transformation and process for people. So let's talk a little bit about your gift and your offer you have for everyone, since we're running low on time. And there's a button below that links over to both of those, so you guys can click on it. Can you share about those?
Yes, you bet. So first, the free gift is a PDF copy of the book, Core Transformation. And so, so you can just download it and have it. And again, this is the book that some people have used as their only resource to do core transformation by themselves. Although, again, for most people, it's so much easier to be guided, but it gives you, a really basic understanding of the process. And then secondly is a special offer. There's a 40% off coupon for the Core Transformation Foundation video training. And this will be good. The offer will be good for at least a few days after you download it. If you download it right away, you have a few days at least to take advantage of this. And so this video course is normally $145. With a 40% off coupon, then it takes it down to, if I've done my math right, $87. And now if you go to the live training, the full tuition cost of that is $595. And, of course, there might be an early bird registration discount or that kind of thing, but that just lets you know that that's the value of the material that we're talking about here. Now, in addition to core transformation, it also includes two other processes that I haven't even talked about. We don't have time to talk about them all, but there's two other processes that we do work with in the core transformation course that are very complementary to core transformation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all that. And everyone watching, I highly recommend you click the button below and go grab that free copy of the book, as well as take advantage of that discount. It sounds amazing. So thank you so much for offering that. Do you have any last insights before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, the thought I want to leave everyone with is that we all have within us an amazing resource. Our true inner nature is still there. There's this amazing resource that cannot be harmed no matter what we've been through. It's just a matter of accessing it. And so, and when we live from our true inner nature, then that could be really even a better resource than anything we might even think about consciously. So there's hope for everyone, and the true inner resource that can resolve these kinds of issues is still there for us all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, you're so welcome. And thank you as well. I really appreciate your work of bringing all of these wonderful resources to so many people.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. So thank you so much. And thank you, AVAIYA students who are watching or listening right now, for showing up for yourself today, for being loving and compassionate with yourself on your journey. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this latest class with Tamara Andreas. She talked with us today about accessing your core being to heal childhood trauma. I really enjoyed this conversation. We went into what this core transformation methodology is and how there are these 3 stages that they help people through. First and foremost, being reaching safety, which is absolutely crucial in your journey. So many of us who have had childhood trauma do not feel safe. And that is something that you must achieve in the healing process, is that inner safety, that feeling safe in your surroundings, feeling safe within your skin, all of that. And I think it was really interesting how we talked about thinking about your past, thinking about past childhood traumatic events without reliving them. So being able to get to that point where you can think about it, you could talk about it, but you're not reliving it. Your body's not going back into fight or flight and going through this whole process of trauma again. So really important to reach safety. Stage number two being really healing the responses that came from trauma. That might be the responses is you became a people pleaser. You have a lot of toxic shame. You have a lot of guilt. You have other kinds of tendencies like codependency or tendencies towards toxic relationships, those kinds of things. So healing those responses that were created from the trauma. And then stage 3 being a much deeper dive into wholeness, into who you really are, into your core being, and experiencing that experience for yourself. So I thought that this was a really beautiful conversation around healing from childhood trauma. I hope you all found it very helpful in your journey. We will see you again very soon. Take care.
AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.